They called it Vyrix 7, the planet that broke machines and boiled blood, a place where even the wind could slice through metal and the ground could eat bones within minutes, and yet she lived there alone. Her name was Sarah, and she had not seen another living soul in 5 long years. Her skin was scarred, her eyes sharp and always moving, her feet bare, but strong like stone. She moved across the molten ridges like a shadow, silent and quick, her breath slow and steady, her hands calloused from climbing cliffs that roared with steam. She was the last one, the only one, the last Death Worlder alive, as far as she knew. The others had died long ago, when the storms came faster than they could run, and the rivers turned to acid, and the skies rained fire. Even the strongest warriors fell, even the elders with their thick armor and old songs could not escape Vyrix 7's hunger. But Sarah did not die. She adapted, she became part of the world, she bent without breaking, she learned how to drink from steam pools and eat fireroot without burning her tongue. She whispered to the smoke, and the smoke left her alone. Every few months, a ship came high in the sky, but it never stayed long. Sometimes they sent drones, but the drones always melted, or crashed, or vanished. Sarah watched them from her cave high above the flame valley. Sometimes she waved, sometimes she screamed, but no one saw her, or maybe they did, and just left then. One day a new ship came, different from the others, not sleek, not loud, but slow and quiet, and strong. It hummed, low and steady, like a heart that did not fear the dark. It circled once, twice, then dropped down into the valley of ash, where nothing ever landed. Sarah narrowed her eyes. She crouched near the edge of her cave and waited. The ship hissed as it opened, hot wind slapped its side, but it did not groan. It held firm. Then a shape stepped out, not a machine, not a drone, but a figure, tall and broad, wearing light gear, not the thick suits others wore. This one moved like he belonged on the ground, like the heat did not scare him, like the smoke was only mist. Sarah's fingers dug into the rock. Who was this fool? Did he not know this place was death? Did he not smell the poison in the air, or feel the burn in his lungs? He walked forward, not fast, not slow, just steady, with a pack on his back, and a calm look on his face, as if he was taking a stroll through a garden, not a furnace. She followed him, silent as ash. She moved from rock to rock, keeping low, watching his every step. He stopped near a sulfur spring, one of the worst places to rest. She waited for him to cough, to choke, to scream, but he only knelt, pulled something from his bag, and began to study a glowing moss that grew near the edge. Her heart pounded. This made no sense. Even she stayed clear of that spring on hot days, and today was one of the hottest in weeks. The ground shimmered like glass and the air twisted with heat lines, and yet he wiped sweat from his brow and smiled on Vyrix 7, as if this cursed place was a warm beach. She climbed higher to get a better view. Maybe he was not human, maybe he was a new kind of machine, or some mutant with fire in his veins. But no, he drank water from a bottle, and rubbed his neck like any other man, like someone who could get tired and sore and sunburned, but still chose to. Sarah whispered to herself, maybe he will leave, maybe the night will freeze him, maybe the thunderworms will find his camp, and then she will not have to wonder anymore. But part of her hoped he would stay, hoped he would walk farther and find the broken tower, or the stone gate, where her people once stood, proud and tall. The sun dipped low, casting long shadows across the burning rocks. The man built a small camp using strange tools he pulled out. Something round and metal. It unfolded into a tiny dome that shimmered with a light shield. She had never seen one like it before. He placed it near a cracked ridge, where lava sometimes leaked through the stone, and sat beside it, humming a song low and gentle. Sarah curled up in her high cave, watching the flicker of his camp light, wondering what kind of creature hums on a death world. What kind of fool dares to sit near lava and sing to himself? What kind of human walks through fire without fear? Her heart beat faster than it had in years, not from danger, not from hunger, but from something strange, something she had not felt since before the last storm, since before she buried her last friend. Hope down below. The man looked up, not toward her, but toward the stars, as if he knew he was being watched, as if he wanted someone to see him. And maybe he did. Maybe he came not to survive, but to find someone to survive with. And far above them both, Vyrix 7 growled and waited. The fire cave was not a place to play or rest. It was a place where even metal screamed and melted, where the ground spat steam hotter than blood, where the air could slice lungs open, and yet the human walked straight toward it, without turning back, without looking afraid. Not once. Sarah moved fast across the high ridges, her feet knowing the safe spots, her body already sweating from the heat that grew worse with every step. The fire cave was the heart of Vyrix 7, the place her people had called the Gate of Wrath, the place where her father had vanished long ago, trying to prove his strength to the gods, or maybe to himself. She remembered the sound of his voice fading in the steam, and How her mother screamed until her throat bled. No one went there after that. No one dared, and yet the human, red, as he had written on the tag on his chest, walked closer than anyone had since her people fell. He passed over the cracked bridge of stone, his boots glowing from heat, his breath even, and slow. Sarah watched him through a crack in the rocks, waiting for the moment he would fall, or cry, or turn back, but he did none of those things. Instead, he reached the edge of the fire cave, knelt and opened a small round device that floated and spun above his hand. The heat rose in waves, the rocks hissed and wept. But the human stayed still, as if he had done this 100 times before. The floating device scanned the air, sent out light waves that danced over the cave walls, then returned to his hand where a small screen blinked. Green. Sarah could not believe it. The air down there could melt skin. The stone itself could crack bones, and yet he stood without a suit, with only thin cloth over his chest, his arms bare, his eyes calm like he was watching a sunrise, not the mouth of a burning beast. She had seen brave things on this world. She had seen hunters face thunderworms and scream songs of death while fire lit the sky. She had seen elders walk into acid storms to protect the young, but this was something else. This was a human alone, with no armor, no weapons, and no fear, walking into a place that had swallowed God's reed. Took a long breath, then stepped even closer to the cave. Edged the fire, licked at his boots, but he did not stop. He leaned over, reached into the glowing pit, and pulled out a chunk of dark rock that burned with a red light. Then he smiled and dropped it into a small pouch on his belt. Sarah's mouth was dry, her hands tight against the stone. She wanted to scream, to warn him, to ask him what kind of madness lived inside his heart, but no words came, only silence and awe and confusion. He turned slowly and looked up toward the high ridge, where she hid again. His eyes did not search wildly, they simply rested, as if he knew she was there, as if he could feel her watching him, as if he welcomed it. Then he said something soft, something lost in the wind, but she felt it like a ripple through the ash, something not made of fear, not made of pride, but made of calm and trust, and maybe something more. He moved back from the edge, walked along the path again, slow and steady, the heat still dancing around him, but never touching him, like he was part of the fire. Not a stranger to it, like he had been born in it. And Vyrek 7 knew his name. Sarah followed at a distance, her heart pounding, not from fear this time, but from a strange pull inside her chest, something that whispered, he is not like the others. He is not here to steal or test or kill. He is here to see and listen, and maybe stay. The human reached a tall stone pillar, a marker from long ago. It bore the marks of her people, circles and lines carved with fire blades, a story of strength and sorrow. Reed placed his hand on the stone, closed his eyes, and stayed like that for a long time, like he was listening to the voices trapped inside. Sarah could no longer stay hidden. She stepped out from behind the ridge, her shadow stretching across the rocks. Reed opened his eyes and looked at her, his face calm, his hands still, her breath caught in her throat. No one had seen her for years. No one had stood this close without pain. He did not speak at first, just nodded once, not slow, not fast, just enough to say, I see you, and I do not fear you, and I do not run. She opened her mouth, but nothing came out, her voice lost in the heat. He smiled again and said something simple, a name, her name. Sarah, her knees almost gave out. No one had said that word in so long. No one could have known it, not unless they had been to the old archives, not unless they searched deeply, not unless they came for her. She stared at him, eyes wide, heart full of fire, not the kind that burns, but the kind that awakens, something old and sleeping inside. And behind her the wind carried the sound of the fire cave breathing slowly, like it too was watching, like it too was waiting for what would happen next. Sarah stood frozen, her feet gripping the hot stone, her breath caught somewhere between her chest and her throat. Her name echoed in the air, soft but clear, carried by the human's voice. Not harsh, not demanding, just calm, like a wind through old leaves. Her name was not something to be said by strangers, not something to be found by outsiders, and yet he had spoken it as if it belonged to him, as if he had known it his whole life. She wanted to run, wanted to vanish into the smoke and rock like she had so many times before, but her legs did not move, her eyes locked onto his face, trying to read it, trying to find lies or tricks or some secret weapon hidden behind that calm voice. But there was nothing there, only warmth and something she could not name. Reed stepped back slowly, hands open, not moving too fast, not making her feel cornered. He knelt down near a patch of fire moss and waited, his eyes watching her, not like prey, not like danger, just like someone who had waited a long time to see someone else, like someone hoping for a sign that he was not alone. Sarah took one step forward, then another, her mind racing with questions. How did he know her name? Why did he speak it so gently? Why did his voice make something ache inside her chest, something she thought had died with her people? She stood above him now, close enough to feel the heat of his body, but still far enough to run if she had to. He looked up and smiled, not a wide smile, not foolish, just a quiet one, the kind that says, I know this place is fire and ash, but I am not afraid, and I am not here to harm you, I am here to understand. And she asked him how he knew her name, her voice sharp and dry like cracked earth. He reached into a pouch and pulled out a small device. Flat and glowing, he showed her a screen. It held ancient symbols, ones only her people used, ones buried long ago after the last temple fell. He said he found them in an old Terran archive, forgotten under dust and rust, deep in a place no one cared to look. He told her he was not a soldier, not a hunter, but a xenobiologist, someone who studied life in places no life should grow. He said he read the stories of the Death Worlders and saw her name written in a child's drawing, hidden in a box wrapped in stone, buried under ruin. He said he had to see if the stories were true, if the last one still walked on Virix. 7 Syrah did not know what to say. Her mind was fire, her heart loud, her mouth dry. No one had spoken of her people in years. No one remembered the songs, or the fires, or the dances under the acid rain. But now this human, this Reed, spoke like he had heard those songs in dreams. She looked at him, and saw no fear, no armor, no pride. Only quiet purpose, and a strange fire behind his eyes, not the kind that destroys, but the kind that endures, the kind that survives and changes everything around. I asked if she had always been alone, if she had ever tried to leave, if she wanted to see another sky. She turned away, her voice tight. She said this was her place, her prison, her memory, her punishment. She said if she left, the fire might forget her, and she might forget them. Reed stood slowly, careful not to spook her. He said, maybe the fire would not forget, maybe it would forgive. Maybe it would let her carry its strength to the stars. Maybe it was not punishment, maybe it was preparation. Syrah clenched her fists, the words dug deep, too deep. She had buried such thoughts under stone and silence for so long, and now he brought them back with a few soft sounds and a strange smile. He offered her something wrapped in cloth. It was a data stone filled with old records. Songs, images, even a child's voice, reading the names of fallen warriors, her name among them. She took it with shaking hands and held it to her chest like it was a living thing. The wind shifted, the sky darkened. Ash began to fall, slow and quiet like snow. The two stood there under the dead sky, between lava and memory, and something new, something that felt like a door not yet opened. She said nothing more that day, nor did he. They sat near the old pillar, watching the fire moss glow as night came crawling over the broken world, and in that silence a thread formed, thin but strong, stretched between a girl of flame and a man of earth. And, far away deep in the planet's throat, something listened. Something stirred, not with anger, but with recognition, as if even the world itself had waited for this meeting, for this moment, when the last daughter of Ash would meet the first son of fire. The sky above Virix 7 was always heavy, always filled with clouds that burned around the edges and bled rust-colored light across the broken land. But that morning was different. The sky was quiet, and the winds held their breath, as if the world itself waited to hear what the girl of fire would say. Syrah sat near the old ridge, her knees pulled to her chest, her eyes locked on the human camp below. She had not slept, her mind was loud, her chest heavier than ever before. Reed had given her a gift, a name from the past, a sound she thought lost forever, and now he offered something more, something even harder to understand. He had asked her to leave, to follow him beyond the storms, beyond the burning stone, beyond the only home she had ever known. He said there were other worlds, softer skies, oceans that sang instead of screamed, trees that bent without breaking, voices that welcomed, not warned. He said she could live, not just survive, but to live, meant to let go, to leave behind the bones of her people, the cracked walls of her childhood, the fire that had shaped her into the thing she had become. She looked at her hands, rough and strong, each scar a memory, a story, a warning. She was not built for peace, she was made by fire, to remain in fire. Reed moved below her, packing his tools, checking his data stone, writing notes on plants that should not grow and creatures that should not live. His movements were slow, his touch gentle. Even when he held sharp things, he did not seem afraid of the world, only curious, only respectful. When she finally climbed down, he looked up and smiled, not surprised, not smug, just patient, like he knew she would come, like he never doubted her feet would bring her back to him. She asked him why he came here, truly, not the soft answer, not the science story, but the real reason, the one hidden under his calm words. He said he had studied many places, learned many names, but something in the old stories pulled at him. The tale of a girl who danced with lightning, who screamed into storm clouds and did not fall, who stayed when all others ran, and built her soul from ash and stone. He said he wanted to see if the story was real, if a heart like that could still beat. Syrah looked away, the heat in her face not from the lava nearby, but from something strange and deep, something she had not felt since the days before the sky cracked open and her world fell. Reed stepped closer, his voice low, his hands still. He said, she did not have to decide now, but she needed to know that she was not alone, not anymore. He showed her something then, a thin metal strip on his arm. He peeled it back to reveal skin, marked with deep-lined scars that glowed faintly. Orange, he said. His body had once failed him, on another world full of ice and hunger. He almost died, but he chose to change, to become something stronger. Not less human, just different. Built to endure like her. She reached out, without thinking, touched the edge of one glowing scar, felt the heat under his skin, and saw the fire in his eyes. Not the kind that destroys, but the kind that lights the way. Through darkness, she pulled her hand back quickly, but he did not flinch. He only said, "Now, you understand." They walked together through the ridge paths, the wind curling around them like curious fingers. He asked her what she remembered of her people. What they loved, what they feared, what they sang when the skies were kind. She spoke slowly, unsure at first. Then faster as the memories found her voice again. She told him of the stone games, the fire dances, the steam songs sung by the mothers, and the long silences held by the elders during the red storms. She told him of the caves where stories were painted in glowing dust, and the sacred lake that boiled during the season of strength. She told him how her father had believed the fire was alive and watching, and how her mother had said the fire did not care. Reed listened to every word, not interrupting, not asking foolish questions. He listened like her words were gold, like they were air, and he had forgotten how to breathe without them. And when she fell silent, he said, "Thank you," like her voice had given him something he could never earn. She asked what he would do if she said no, if she chose to stay, if she walked away and vanished back into the steam. He said then he would wait a little longer, and if she never came back, he would leave with her name carved into his bones, and her story written in every page of his work. He said, knowing she lived was enough. Her chest ached, her legs felt weak. Her mind screamed with old rules and ancient fears, but something deeper whispered a new sound. Not a scream, not a song, just a quiet yes that echoed through her blood and settled in her bones. And above them the clouds cracked just once, letting a beam of golden light fall on the black stone, like a promise, like a sign, like the world itself had opened one eye and chosen not to look away. The valley was quiet, not the kind of quiet that brings peace, but the kind that holds its breath before a scream, the kind that makes even the wind feel nervous as it moves through broken pillars and twisted roots. This place was called the Valley of Bones, not because of stories, not because of fear, but because the ground itself still held the remains of those who had dared to stand and fall. Sira walked ahead, her eyes never leaving the path, her feet knowing each crack, each dip, each burn mark, as if her blood had drawn the trail itself long ago. Behind her came Reed, silent, respectful, his eyes wide, not with fear, but with something close to sorrow, something deeper than wonder. The valley stretched wide and long, bordered by black cliffs that reached into smoke-filled sky. The air tasted like old tears and burnt metal. Every step echoed softly, as if the bones beneath the surface remembered every foot that had touched them once before they passed. Shattered statues of warriors there, faces melted by fire, their weapons snapped in half by time or heat, or both. They passed a stone arch carved with the names of the fallen, names now scorched and unreadable. But Sarah could still hear them. In her mind she had walked this path alone many times, each visit pulling her deeper into the memory of what she had lost. Reed said nothing. He stopped sometimes to touch a broken shield or lift a fallen banner, never taking anything, never moving too fast, always looking as if he saw more than just dust, as if he saw the echo. Sira stopped at a wide platform near the center of the valley, where the old council used to stand, where her mother once raised her voice against the winds, and her father stood beside her with fire in his eyes. This was the heart of her world once, and now it was only shadow. She turned to Reed and told him this is where it ended. This is where they fought, not to win, but to be remembered. She said they stood side by side, knowing the ground would swallow them, but they sang anyway. They sang until the air caught fire, and the sky broke open, and the earth itself cried out. Reed knelt beside a scorched pillar, his fingers brushing a mark that still glowed faintly. In the low light, he said nothing again, only looked up at her, and waited, and somehow that was more powerful than any question, more gentle than any comfort. She walked to the edge of the platform, and pointed toward a jagged hill, where a single tower still stood, barely a skeleton of its former shape. This was the death bell, a tower that once rang when danger came, a sound so deep it could shake mountains, and now it rang only when the world was angry. We should not stay too long here, she said. The wind is shifting, and the bones remember when strangers walk this ground. She turned to go, but Reed stayed where he was, staring at the tower, his brow furrowed, his voice soft as he asked, what made it ring now? What wakes it when there are no more people to warn? Sira froze, her heart skipping. She had never asked that, not once in all her years. Here she had always heard the bell and run, or hidden, or simply waited, but never wondered, never wanted to know before she could answer. A low hum began to rise from the ground, a vibration that danced across her skin and made the stones beneath her feet feel like they were breathing. The death bell was ringing slow and deep, not loud, not fast, just once every few breaths. Like a giant heartbeat, Reed stood slowly, his eyes on the tower, the wind rising around them, carrying ash and smoke and something else, something old, something angry. Sarah grabbed his arm, her voice sharp. "We need to go now," she said. "This place is waking up." They ran back across the valley, the sound growing louder behind them. Not faster but heavier, like the ground was pulling itself upward, like the silence had broken, and the world was remembering how to scream again. The air shook, the sky cracked, and the stone beneath their feet trembled. As they reached the outer ridge, Reed stumbled, and Sarah caught him, her hands strong, her eyes wide. She had never seen the world move like this, not since the day her people vanished. Hey! Roar rose behind them, not a sound of wind or quake, but a sound like metal grinding against bone. Like fire being born again. Something was coming, something that had slept too long, and dreamed too deeply. They climbed to a high ridge, and turned back, just as a part of the valley floor split open, and a great shape began to rise from the smoke. Not fast, not wild, just slow and sure, like it knew it had time, like it knew they would not leave without seeing it. Was huge, covered in stone plates and glowing lines like molten rivers, its eyes like twin suns burning through the ash. It looked at them, not with rage, but with recognition, like it had seen them before, like it had waited for this moment. Sarah felt her knees weaken, not from fear, but from knowing, from understanding, that this was not just a beast, not just a monster, but a memory, given flesh, a piece of her past, that had refused to stay buried. Clift stepped forward slightly, his breath steady, his voice calm as he said, "What is that?" And Sarah answered with words that tasted like iron and smoke. "It is the thing we tried to kill and failed. It is the thing that remembers us when even we try to forget. The thing that rose from the broken valley was not made of flesh or bone, not fully at least. It was something else, something older, something shaped by fire and time, something that had seen the fall of her people and kept breathing even when the world forgot its name. It climbed from the crack like a mountain, learning to move its steps slow but full of weight, its body thick with stone, its eyes glowing like twin lava pools, watching everything without blinking. Sarah pulled Reed back as the creature moved forward, its head swaying like it was sniffing the air, as if their presence had stirred something deep inside its ancient form. The wind screamed, and the ground moaned as the valley shook again, small rocks falling from the high cliffs like frightened birds. The death bell gave one last deep ring before it cracked and fell silent. Once more Reed stared at the creature, his face unreadable, not full of fear, but of awe, the kind of awe that comes when someone sees a living god or a dying world, or both. He asked what it was, but Sarah only shook her head, her voice quiet, her words heavy. "We called it the stone beast." She said it was made by the fire gods, or born in the first quake. No one knew for sure, but when it came, it did not stop until the fires burned black, and the rivers turned to ash. The creature raised its head and let out a low sound, not a roar, not a scream, but something deep and hollow, like the world itself, crying out in pain. Its massive claws dragged across the stone, leaving glowing lines behind each step, melting the ground a little more, its body shifting with slow, grinding noise like mountains breaking apart. Sarah grabbed Reed's arm and pulled him behind a tall spire of rock. "We cannot fight this," she said. "Even my people with all their weapons and strength could not bring it down. We must make it chase us. We must lead it to the fire cave again. It fears that place even now. I can feel it." Reed nodded without question, without wasting time. He pulled out a small device from his belt, pressed a few buttons, and tossed it into the open space ahead. A loud pulse burst from the device, drawing the creature's gaze in an instant. It turned toward the sound, its body groaning as it moved its steps, breaking the ground with every motion. They ran together fast across broken paths and steaming ridges, Sarah leading with feet that knew every corner, every crack, Reed behind her, quick and sure, not perfect, but strong. The way he moved reminded her of old war dancers who knew their limits, but pushed anyway, not to win, but to survive with purpose. The stone beast followed, crashing through old walls and broken shrines, its roar still deep, still cold, as if it had no true anger, only duty, only hunger, only memory, and it remembered her. She knew that now, she could feel it in her bones. It was not chasing just anything, it was chasing her. The path to the fire cave was steep and twisted, lined with sharp stone and boiling vents. They had to climb fast, slipping once or twice, but never stopping, not even when the wind carried the scent of burning stone and broken time behind them. When they reached the upper ridge, Sarah pointed to it. thin path near the edge of the cliffs. It led straight into the fire cave, a place where heat screamed, and shadows danced, where even she feared to stay too long. The beast cannot cross it, she said. Its stone will crack if we draw it to close it. Will fall, it must fall. Reed looked at the path then, at the creature coming closer, now its body glowing brighter, its steps faster, its eyes locked on them, not blinking, not turning aside. He turned to her and said, "You go, I will make sure it follows." And without waiting, he ran across the path, waving his arms, shouting loud sounds from a device that echoed across the cliffs. Syrah shouted after him, her voice raw with fear and fire, but he did not stop. He reached the middle of the path, just as the stone beast roared again, and gave chase. The narrow ridge shook under its weight, stones falling to the fire pits below. Sarah could barely breathe, watching them both so close to the edge of death. Then it happened. Reed reached the center of the fire cave where the heat rose in waves, where the ground pulsed with glowing veins. He turned back as the creature stepped onto the thinnest part of the path and pressed something on his wrist. A blast of light rose from the cave, not an explosion, but a burst of fire drawn upward in a column of heat, so intense, the very air screamed. The creature stepped into it and froze its body, cracking its roar, changing to a groan, then to silence, as it lost balance and fell down into the fire. Reed back his arm, shielding his face, the heat dancing across his skin. Syrah ran to him, pulled him away. Just as the last rocks crumbled, and the stone beast vanished into the pit below, swallowed by the cave it once feared. They collapsed together near the edge, both shaking, both breathing fast. Sarah looked at him, his skin red, his eyes tired but alive. "You walked through fire," she whispered, her voice breaking. "You walked through fire from beyond, far below." The world gave one long sigh, as if it too had let go of something it had held for too long. The fire behind them still roared, sending light into the sky like a signal to the stars, like a cry from the heart of a world that had held its pain. Too long. Reed lay still, his chest rising slowly, his hands burned, his face pale, but his eyes open, his breath steady as Sarah knelt beside him, her fingers shaking as they touched his shoulder, checking his pulse, feeling the warmth that meant he was still alive. Had seen many die in this place, brave warriors, strong elders, mothers, who sang their children to sleep with fire songs, all taken by the heat and the storms and the silence. But this man, this human, had walked into the very mouth of the flame, returned not just for knowledge, not just for proof, but for her. Her mind struggled to hold the truth, her heart fought to stay calm as she wrapped his arm over her shoulders and pulled him up slowly, every step heavy, every breath shared between them. The wind around them soft, for once almost kind, as if the world itself had seen what he had done, and now chose not to fight him. Together, they moved back along the path, their shadows long in the glow of the dying fire. The stone beast was gone, its roar silenced, its memory sinking back into the deep veins of Virex 7, but its fall had changed something, not just in the ground, not just in the sky, but in Syrah's soul. She had lived as a ghost among ruins, a name forgotten by time, a flame kept alive only by grief. But now someone had spoken her name with care. Now someone had burned for her, not in anger, not in war, but in choice, and that choice lit something inside her that even the fire could not reach. Reed spoke at last, his voice weak but full of life, asking if it was over, asking if the world would rest now. Sarah did not know the answer, but she told him yes, because in that moment she needed it to be true, needed the pain to stop, needed the sky to soften, and the earth to breathe again. They reached the edge of the valley, where the wind changed, where the ash stopped falling, where the sky opened just enough to show a patch of stars far away, and strange to her, but bright and clean. Reed looked up at them and smiled, a small, tired smile, like a man who had climbed too far to turn back. Now Syrah sat beside him, holding a cup of steam water to his lips, her hands careful, her eyes never leaving his face. She asked why he had done it, why he had come, why he had walked into fire with no promise of return, and his answer was simple and raw. He said, "Because I saw strength in you, and I wanted you to see it." To her, heart broke open, not with pain, but with release, with something she had held back for years, something heavier than stone, something older than fear. And in that breaking came light, not like the fire, not like the sun, but like memory made warm again. The next morning the sky above them turned gold, not bright, not clean, but softer than usual. The air held less poison, the winds moved slower, and the ground did not growl. The world had not changed fully, but it had shifted, and sometimes a small shift is enough to start something new. Reed stood with help, his body weak but willing. He looked at the land, then at her, and asked one last time if she would come with him, if she would see what waited beyond the burning clouds and cracked soil, if she would carry her story into places that had never heard of Deathworld. Ursa turned back once more, to look at her home, the cliffs, the caves, the valleys filled with the bones of her past. The songs that still floated in the air, the shadows of faces she would never forget. She whispered a goodbye to each one, not with sorrow, but with strength, and then she nodded. They walked to the human ship together, slow but steady, her steps unsure, but forward the door opened, with a soft breath, and the lights inside was strange and clean. And knew she paused at the edge, looking back one last time, and for the first time the planet did not pull at her, it let her go. The ship rose through the smoke, cutting through the ash clouds like a blade through silk, and as it rose, Syrah looked down, watching the fire valleys shrink, watching the cracked mountains fade until they were just shapes in the mist, until they were just a memory carved deep inside her heart. Reed sat beside her, his hand near hers, not touching, but close enough to remind her she was not alone, not anymore. She turned to him and asked, "What comes next?" And he smiled and said, "Whatever we choose." And beyond the sky, beyond the fire, beyond the silence of Vyrix 7, the stars waited.